After finishing my school studies, I was eager to find a part-time job, especially with the holiday season coming up. Just before Christmas week, I received an offer to work at a reputable logistics company for a week. The pay was good, and the work seemed simple enough, even though it required night shifts. I figured it would be a great opportunity to earn some extra cash. The job was to replace employees who had taken early leave for Christmas. I was stationed in one of the company's massive warehouses, where I'd work the graveyard shift. I had no idea how terrifying that week would become. On my first night, everything was routine. My team leader gave me a quick briefing, and the tasks were fairly straightforward. I had to organize and move boxes, making sure everything was in place for the next day's deliveries. The only real challenge was staying awake. The warehouse was huge, and the silence of the night made the work feel eerie. Occasionally, I'd hear the distant hum of a machine or the faint sound of a forklift, but for the most part, it was dead quiet. By midnight, I was fighting off sleep. I started looking for a secluded corner, somewhere out of view from the CCTV cameras where I could catch a quick nap. After wandering around, I found the perfect spot at the far end of the warehouse. It was dark and hidden behind stacks of boxes, completely shielded from any cameras. The place had a strange, unsettling feel to it, but at the time, I didn't think much of it. The second night, I felt even more exhausted. I had finished my tasks, but the sleepiness hit me hard. I decided to return to the same hidden corner. As I walked down the dimly lit corridors between the rows of towering boxes, I felt something unusual. It was as if someone was following me. I could hear faint footsteps echoing in the distance, matching my pace. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was one of the other workers on their rounds. But when I looked back, no one was there. My heart raced, but I told myself it was nothing. I reached my secluded spot, arranged a few boxes to lie on, and closed my eyes. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard it again. Those same footsteps, but closer this time. I sat up, listening intently. The footsteps were soft but deliberate, moving slowly toward me. My skin crawled. I stood up, looking around, but there was no one there. The warehouse was eerily silent. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash. The sound came from the other side of the warehouse, where one of the stacks of boxes had fallen over. Startled, I jumped to my feet, my heart pounding. I ran toward the main floor, hoping to find someone, anyone, to confirm what I had heard. But when I got there, the area was completely empty. No one had been near the boxes, and everything seemed in place. By the third night, things had escalated. I started noticing small, strange occurrences throughout the warehouse. Boxes that had been neatly stacked the night before were suddenly in disarray. Tools were misplaced, and there was a growing sense that something wasn't right. My coworkers mentioned feeling uneasy too, but none of us wanted to openly admit that we were scared. As the night wore on, I once again felt drawn to that hidden corner. I don't know why I kept going back there. It was as if the place had some strange pull on me. This time, as I approached, the footsteps started almost immediately. They were louder, more distinct, and I could hear them running now, like someone was rushing toward me. I froze in place, my heart racing. A cold breeze swept through the warehouse, even though all the doors were closed. I felt a chill run down my spine. I looked around but saw no one. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a shadow moving between the boxes. It was too quick to get a good look, but I knew I wasn't alone. Terrified, I ran back to the main area. But when I reached the brightly lit center, I still felt uneasy. I decided to talk to my supervisor. I told him about the strange things I had been hearing and seeing. To my surprise, he didn't seem shocked. He nodded slowly and said, "You're not the first one to experience this. We've had workers here before who've reported similar things, especially during the night shift." He went on to tell me that the warehouse was built on old land, with a history of mysterious occurrences. He didn't go into detail, but the way he talked about it made my skin crawl. I wasn't sure if he was just messing with me, but there was something about the way he spoke that made me believe he was telling the truth. On the fourth night, things took a terrifying turn. As soon as I started my shift, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The warehouse, usually filled with the soft hum of machines, was eerily silent. I went about my tasks, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Halfway through the night, I heard the footsteps again, but this time, they weren't just following me. They were running, fast. I looked around trying to find the source of the sound, but there was no one there. Then, out of the darkness, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the end of the aisle just staring at me. It didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there watching. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Without thinking, I turned and ran. I sprinted down the aisle, not daring to look back. The footsteps followed me, growing louder and faster. I could hear the figure's breath, cold and ragged, as it chased me through the warehouse. I didn't stop running until I reached the break room, where I found a few of my co-workers sitting around, completely oblivious to what had just happened. I told them everything, but they didn't believe me. They laughed it off, saying I was just tired and imagining things. But I knew what I had seen, what I had heard. The figure was real, and it was still out there lurking in the shadows of the warehouse. On my final night, I was on edge from the moment I arrived. Every noise, every shadow made me jump. I didn't go back to the hidden corner. I couldn't. Instead, I stayed in the main area of the warehouse, trying to focus on my work. But the footsteps returned, louder and more insistent than ever before. Just before the end of my shift, I saw the figure again. It was closer this time, standing just a few feet away from me. I could see its face now, pale and twisted, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. I backed away slowly, my heart racing. The figure took a step toward me, then another. I turned and ran, not stopping until I was outside the warehouse, gasping for breath in the cold night air. When my week was finally over, I left the warehouse with a mix of relief and curiosity. What had I seen? Was it just exhaustion? Or was there something more sinister lurking in that dark, cavernous space? I never went back to that warehouse again. Even now, I can still hear the footsteps in my mind, still feel the chill of the figure's gaze. I don't know what it was, but I'm certain it wasn't human.